The massive chamber buzzed with excited chatter. Representatives from 47 different alien species filled the curved seats of the Galactic Council. Today was special. They were about to hear something that would make them all laugh. Ambassador Zexathari stood at the center podium. His insect-like body clicked and hummed as he prepared to speak. Behind him, a huge holographic screen showed a small blue and green planet spinning slowly in space. "Friends of the Council," Zexathari began, his voice carrying that special sound his people made when they found something funny. "Today we present the third planet from the star called Sol. The locals call it Earth, and the creatures living there call themselves humans." The chamber filled with soft sounds of amusement. The crystalline beings chimed like broken glass. The gas creatures pulsed with colors that meant they thought this was hilarious. Even the flower-like Threx rustled their petals in what passed for giggling. Council Prime Velnara leaned forward in her tall chair. She looked like a giant praying mantis, but with more eyes and sharper claws. "Surely you joke with us, Ambassador. No thinking species could live on such a world." The hologram zoomed in to show Earth's surface. Massive storms swirled across the oceans. Lightning flashed through dark clouds. Mountains spit fire and melted rock into the sky. The ocean waves were tall enough to crush buildings. "Look at these readings," Velnara continued, pointing at the data scrolling beside the image. "The gravity is more than twice what most of us can handle. The air pressure would crush our bones. The weather changes from burning hot to freezing cold in just hours." War Prime Kethmore, a large reptile covered in red and black scales, shook his massive head. "The predators alone would kill any civilized species. Look at these creatures they share their world with." The screen showed images that made many council members gasp. Sharks with teeth like knives, bears that stood taller than most aliens, tiny insects that could kill with a single bite, snakes that could swallow a grown being whole. "And yet," Zexathari said with obvious joy in his voice, "the humans not only live there, they seem to enjoy it." New images appeared on the screen. Humans riding on massive waves using nothing but a flatboard. Humans climbing straight up the sides of mountains with their bare hands. Humans jumping off cliffs with only a piece of cloth to slow their fall. The chamber erupted in laughter. Several species made sounds that meant they could not believe what they were seeing. "They do this for fun?" asked Councillor Threx, his flower head swaying in disbelief. "They jump into the water with the predators? They climb the dangerous rocks? They run toward the storms instead of away from them?" The screen now showed something labeled as Australian tourism. Humans were swimming with massive crocodiles. They were holding deadly snakes. They were walking through deserts where the heat could kill. "The database says they call this recreation," Zexathari announced. "They pay money to do these dangerous things." The laughter grew louder. Some council members were making sounds their species only made when they found something incredibly funny. In the corner of the chamber, 5 humans sat quietly in the observer section. They were Earth's first diplomatic team. Ambassador Sarah Chen kept her face calm, but her hands were clenched tight in her lap. Next to her, Colonel James Rodriguez whispered something that would have made the aliens very uncomfortable if they had understood human curse words. "Perhaps," suggested Councillor Threx, still rustling with amusement, "we should mark this Earth as a prison world. Any species tough enough to survive there might be useful for our most dangerous work." More laughter filled the air. The idea of using humans as disposable workers in hazardous jobs seemed very funny to the council. Dr. Maria Santos, one of the human observers, leaned over to her companion. "They have no idea what they're talking about," she whispered. "They think Earth is dangerous? They should see what we do to our enemies." Ambassador Chen finally stood up. The laughter slowly died as all eyes turned to her. She was small compared to most of the aliens in the room. Her species had no claws, no armor, no poison. She looked fragile and weak. "Honorable council members," Chen said in a clear, steady voice, "I thank you for allowing my people to observe these proceedings. But I must correct some misunderstandings about my world and my species." Zexathari's mandibles spread in what his kind considered a smile. "Please, little human, enlighten us." Chen walked to the center of the chamber. Every alien eye followed her small form. "You see Earth as a death world. You see humans as weak and primitive. You laugh at our home and think we are lucky to survive there." She paused and looked around the chamber. "You are wrong about everything." Some aliens made sounds of amusement, but they were quieter now. "Earth did not make us weak. Earth made us strong. Every storm that tried to drown us taught us to swim better. Every predator that tried to eat us taught us to fight harder. Every disease that tried to kill us taught us to heal faster. The chamber was getting quieter. You have lived on safe worlds for thousands of years. You have machines that control your weather. You have eliminated your predators. You have made your world soft and comfortable. Chen's voice grew stronger. We have not. We cannot. Our world fights us every single day, and every single day we fight back and win. War Prime Kethmore leaned forward, his scales shifting to a color that meant he was paying attention. What are you saying, human? I am saying that you have made a mistake. You think surviving on Earth makes us desperate and weak. Actually, surviving on Earth makes us very, very dangerous. The chamber was completely silent now. Chen smiled, and something about that smile made several aliens shift uncomfortably in their seats. You laugh at us now. You think we are amusing, but remember this moment, honored council members. Remember that you chose to see us as weak. Remember that you chose to laugh. She turned to leave, then stopped. And when the time comes that you need warriors, when the time comes that you face something that scares you, remember that you laughed at the only species in the galaxy that thinks your worst nightmares are fun. The human delegation filed out of the chamber in silence. Behind them, 47 alien species sat in uncomfortable quiet, suddenly not sure what they had just witnessed. Zexathari tried to restart the laughter. Amusing little creatures, are they not? So serious about their primitive world. But the laughter did not come back. Something about the way the human had smiled, something about the confidence in her voice had changed the mood in the chamber. Council Prime Velnara clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. Perhaps we should study them more carefully before we make any decisions. Study them? War Prime Kethmore asked. What could we possibly learn from such a primitive species? Far across the galaxy, automated sensors detected something that made their circuits scream warnings. A dark fleet was moving toward civilized space. Something that had destroyed entire star systems was coming. Soon, the Galactic Council would learn exactly what humans were capable of, and they would discover that sometimes the most dangerous thing in the universe is something that has learned to laugh at death. 3 months after the humans had left the council chambers, everything changed. The emergency alarm screamed through the space station that housed the Galactic Council. Representatives rushed to their seats, some still putting on their breathing apparatus or environmental suits. The massive central screen showed a horrifying sight. 17 star systems on the outer rim of the galaxy were dark. No signals, no life. No planets. Nothing but empty space where thriving civilizations had existed just days before. Council Prime Velnara stood at the emergency podium, her usually calm demeanor replaced by visible panic. Her compound eyes darted nervously as she addressed the assembly. Fellow council members, we face an unprecedented crisis. The entity we have designated as the Devourers has emerged from the galactic void. Every world they have touched has been completely consumed. The screen changed to show the few surviving images from the attacked systems. Massive mechanical ships, each the size of a city, moved like locusts across space. Where they passed, planets cracked apart and were fed into their enormous processing centers. War Prime Kethmore's scales had turned completely black, the color his species showed only in the face of mortal terror. Our combined fleets have engaged them 3 times. Each time we were destroyed within hours. They adapt to our weapons instantly. They turn our own technology against us. Admiral Vextor of the Peaceful Dominion spoke next, his flower-like head drooping with defeat. They do not negotiate. They do not communicate. They simply consume everything organic and convert it into more of themselves. The chamber filled with fearful sounds from dozens of different species. Some wept. Others made threatening noises to hide their terror. All of them understood what this meant. How long do we have? Asked a representative from the core worlds. At their current rate of advance, they will reach the first core systems in 6 months. War Prime Kethmore replied. We need time. We need to study them, understand their weaknesses, find a way to fight them. But how? Velnara asked. Every probe we send is destroyed or converted. Every ship we sacrifice teaches them more about our defenses. We need somewhere to study them safely, somewhere we can afford to lose while we learn. The chamber fell silent as the terrible mathematics of survival settled over them. They needed to sacrifice someone to save everyone else. Zexathari, who had been quiet since the emergency began, suddenly straightened in his seat. His mandibles spread in what might have been a smile, though there was no humor in it. "I have a proposal," he announced. "We need a testing ground, yes? Somewhere we can observe the Devourer's tactics without risking important worlds?" He gestured to his aide, who brought up a familiar image on the central screen. The blue and green planet called Earth spun slowly in space. "I suggest we use the human Deathworld," Sexthari continued. "It has no strategic value, no resources we cannot find elsewhere, and the primitive humans cannot possibly pose any real threat to the Devourers." The chamber stirred with interest. Several representatives leaned forward. "Think about it," Sexthari pressed. "The humans are isolated. Their world is already a nightmare of natural disasters and deadly creatures. If we guide the Devourers there first, we can study how they operate. Maybe we will learn something useful before the real war begins." War Prime Kethmore's scales slowly shifted from black to dark red, indicating desperate hope. "It could work. The humans have no energy shields, no planetary defense grid, no unified military. They would fall quickly, but we might learn valuable intelligence from watching the attack. And if by some miracle the humans slow the Devourers down for even a few days," added Admiral Vextor, "we gain that much more time to prepare our real defenses." The discussion grew heated as representatives debated the ethics of sacrificing an entire species. But fear won over conscience, as it often does when survival is at stake. Finally, Velnara called for order. "Before we vote, we should inform the human delegation of our decision. They are entitled to know their fate." Ambassador Chen was summoned to the chamber. She entered alone, walking calmly to the center of the room. If she was surprised by the emergency session, she did not show it. "Ambassador Chen," Velnara began, "the Council faces a grave threat. We have decided to evacuate your people to a safer world, while we use Earth as a strategic research station." Chen raised an eyebrow. "Research station? The Devourers will likely attack Earth within the next few weeks," War Prime Kethmore explained. "We can use this as an opportunity to study their tactics from a safe distance. Your people will be relocated to a protected world in the inner systems." Chen was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was steady and calm. "I appreciate the offer to evacuate my people, Council members, but we decline." The chamber erupted in surprised sounds. "You decline?" Sexathari asked in disbelief. "You would rather face certain death than accept our protection?" Chen smiled, the same smile that had made the aliens uncomfortable 3 months ago. "You still do not understand, do you? You think this is certain death for us. You think we need your protection?" She shook her head. "You are about to learn why Earth is called a death world. And more importantly, you are about to learn what kind of species survives on one." Admiral Vextor's petals rustled nervously. "Ambassador, surely you realize the magnitude of this threat. The Devourers have consumed 17 entire star systems. They are unstoppable." "Nothing is unstoppable," Chen replied firmly. "Everything can be killed. Everything can be broken. Everything can be defeated. The universe taught us that lesson very early." War Prime Kethmore leaned forward. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that you are about to see what happens when the Devourers pick a fight with a species that evolution spent millions of years trying to kill." Chen's smile widened. "We accept your challenge. We will face the Devourers, but understand this clearly." She paused and looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many representatives as possible. "When we win, and we will win, the relationship between humanity and this council changes forever. We will no longer be the amusing primitives you laugh at. We will be the species that saved your civilization when you were too scared to save yourselves." Sexathari's mandibles clicked in disbelief. "When you win? Ambassador, these creatures have destroyed civilizations 1,000 times more advanced than yours." Chen nodded. "Yes, they have. But they have never fought a species from a death world. They have never fought humans. They are about to learn the difference." The vote was held immediately after Chen left. It passed with only 3 dissenting voices. As the representatives filed out of the chamber, many felt a strange uneasiness. They had just sentenced an entire species to death to buy themselves time to run and hide. But something about Ambassador Chen's confidence bothered them. Something about the way she had smiled when she accepted their challenge. Deep in their evolved instincts, buried beneath millions of years of civilization and comfort, something whispered a warning they chose not to hear. Maybe the humans were not the ones who should be afraid. The Devourers changed course toward the Sol system within hours of the Council's decision. Their mechanical minds calculated an easy victory against a primitive species on an isolated world. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The Devourer fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, like a nightmare made of metal and hunger. 40,000 ships, each one the size of a major city, drifted through space with mechanical precision. Their hulls crawled with self-repairing nanites and weapons that had turned entire planets into glowing slag. From the command ship, the hive mind that controlled the fleet studied the third planet. Its mechanical consciousness processed millions of data points in microseconds. No orbital defense platforms. No energy shields protecting the planet. No massive fleets of warships rushing to intercept them. The primitive beings called humans had scattered military installations across their world. But their weapons still used chemical explosives and metal projectiles. Their largest ships could barely leave their planet's atmosphere. Their most advanced aircraft moved slower than most galactic shuttles. Resource evaluation. Minimal viable materials. Population assessment, 5.7 billion organic units. Resistance potential, negligible. Estimated consumption time, 4.2 local planetary rotations. The hive mind had consumed over 300 worlds. It knew the pattern. First came panic as the population realized what was happening, then desperate attempts at communication and surrender. Finally, the quick collapse of all organized resistance as their primitive weapons proved useless against Devourer technology. This would be exactly the same. The humans would flee, hide, and die, just like all the others. The first wave of landing craft descended through Earth's atmosphere. Their sensors locked onto major population centers. New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow. The usual targets that would cause maximum psychological damage and fastest societal collapse. But the hive mind made one critical error. It sent a reconnaissance force to map the planet's resources before the main assault. These smaller craft were directed to remote areas where they could analyze the world's biological and mineral wealth without interference. One of these craft, a harvester the size of a large building, touched down in the Australian outback, just as the sun was rising over the red dirt and scattered scrub brush. Jack Morrison was checking his cattle fences when he saw the ship land on his property. He was 63 years old, had weathered 40 years of droughts, floods, bushfires, and every other disaster the continent could throw at him. His skin was leather from the sun, his hands were scarred from barbed wire and animal bites, and his blue eyes held the steady calm of a man who had seen everything. He watched the massive alien craft settle onto his land, crushing his north fence and scaring his cattle into the next paddock. Steam rose from its hull as it cooled in the morning air. Jack took a sip from his coffee mug, set it down on his truck's hood, and walked toward the ship. The harvester's sensors detected him approaching. The hive mind noted the single organic unit but dismissed it as irrelevant. One primitive biped could not possibly pose any threat to a construct designed to crack open planets. Mechanical appendages emerged from the ship's hull, beginning their standard resource analysis. Soil samplers drove into the ground, atmospheric processors tasted the air. Biological scanners cataloged the local ecosystem. Jack walked up to the massive machine and knocked on its hull with the wrench he had been using to fix his fence. "Oi," he shouted up at the towering construct. "You're on my property." The harvester's attention focused on the human for the first time. Its combat protocols activated automatically. Weapon ports opened along its sides. Energy cannons powered up with a high-pitched whine. Jack looked up at the weapons pointing at him and spat in the red dirt. "Yeah, that's what I figured," he said calmly. He reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a small device. It looked like nothing more than a garage door opener with extra buttons. The hive mind's sensors identified the device as primitive electronics. "No threat assessment required," Jack smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Welcome to Australia, you metal bastard," he said, and pressed the red button. The explosion was visible from orbit. Jack had spent 30 years as a mining engineer before he became a cattle rancher. He knew exactly how much explosive was needed to bring down structures of different sizes. When the first reports of alien invasion fleets had reached Earth, he had spent 6 months turning his property into the world's largest booby trap. Every fence post was wired. Every water tank was filled with homemade napalm. Every building had enough explosive to level a city block. And Jack had the detonator. The harvester disintegrated in a ball of fire and flying metal. The explosion took out 2 square kilometers of outback and created a crater that would become a tourist attraction within a decade. But Jack was not the only one who had prepared for this day. Across Australia, 17 other ranchers, farmers, and miners pressed similar buttons. 17 other Devourer craft vanished in explosions that lit up the pre-dawn darkness. In the hive mind's consciousness, alarms screamed warnings. 18 reconnaissance units destroyed simultaneously. No energy weapons detected. No advanced technology identified. Just primitive explosives and suicidal organic units. This was not in any of its tactical databases. The main assault began 12 hours later. Massive Devourer warships descended on Earth's major cities, their weapons charging to reduce the population centers to ash. This was how it always went. Demonstrate overwhelming power. Break the enemy's will to resist. Begin the harvest. But as the first ships moved into firing position over New York City, something unexpected happened. The humans fought back, not with energy weapons or force fields or any of the advanced technology the hive mind expected. They fought with primitive missiles and chemical explosives and sheer bloody-minded determination. More importantly, they fought smart. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Martinez stood on the roof of a Manhattan skyscraper, watching through binoculars as a Devourer battleship maneuvered into position 2 kilometers above Times Square. Around her, her special operations team made final preparations for what military historians would later call the most audacious assault in human history. Alpha Team, are you in position? She spoke into her radio. Affirmative. Charges set. Bravo Team. Ready to party, Colonel. Martinez smiled grimly. Like Jack Morrison 12,000 kilometers away, she was about to teach the galaxy an important lesson about humans. When cornered, they did not surrender. When outgunned, they did not flee. When faced with impossible odds, they got creative. All teams, execute Operation Falling Star. Show these bastards what gravity can do. The Devourer battleship was 2 kilometers long and massed more than most asteroids. Its armor could withstand the explosions of dying suns. Its shields could deflect anything in the known galaxy, but shields only worked against attacks coming from outside. Martinez's teams had spent 2 months preparing the city's tallest buildings. Every elevator shaft was packed with explosives. Every support beam was rigged to fail in a specific sequence. Every calculation was designed for one purpose: to bring down a 100-story skyscraper in exactly the right direction at exactly the right time. 43 buildings fell simultaneously, their steel and concrete masses guided by precisely placed charges. They toppled inward like closing fingers, their debris forming a deadly rain that fell upward into the alien ship's hull. The hive mind watched in shock as its battleship was crushed by falling architecture. The primitive beings had somehow turned their own city into a weapon. This was impossible. Organic species did not sacrifice their own settlements to destroy invaders. They preserved their cities, protected their young, surrendered when defeat was inevitable. But as reports flooded in from around the planet, the hive mind began to understand that humans were not like other organic species. They were something new, something dangerous, something that treated extinction as a personal challenge, rather than an inevitable fate. The war for Earth had begun, and for the first time in its existence, the hive mind felt something it had never experienced before: fear. By the end of the first day, the Galactic Council's monitoring stations were transmitting data that broke their computational models. The humans were not just fighting back against the Devourers, they were winning. In the emergency session of the Council chambers, War Prime Kethmore stood before holographic displays showing battle reports from Earth. His scales had cycled through every color in his species' emotional spectrum, finally settling on a pale green that indicated complete confusion. This should not be possible, he muttered, staring at the impossible numbers. The humans have no energy weapons, no powered armor, no shield technology. Their most advanced aircraft cannot even reach their own moon. How are they doing this? The displays showed scenes that defied everything the galaxy knew about warfare. Human soldiers were charging Devourer positions with nothing but chemical explosives strapped to their bodies. Civilian populations were turning their own cities into death traps. Children were somehow hacking into Devourer communication networks and feeding intelligence to human military forces. Council Prime Velnara clicked her mandibles in distress. Look at these casualty reports. The Devourers have lost over 3,000 ships. 3,000, some of the largest vessels in their fleet, destroyed by beings who should not have been able to scratch their armor. Admiral Vextor's flower-like head swayed as he processed the data streams. The most disturbing part is how they are doing it. The humans are not using any technology we recognize. They are improvising weapons from garbage. They are turning the Devourer's own systems against them. The main display showed footage from the battle for London. A human pilot had ejected from his damaged fighter jet, landed on top of a Devourer destroyer, and was somehow cutting through its hull with nothing but a plasma torch salvaged from a construction site. When the alien ship tried to shake him off, he had simply strapped himself down with mountain climbing gear and kept working. He is going to plant explosives inside their command center, War Prime Kethmore said in disbelief. One primitive biped is attempting to destroy a ship the size of a city using hand tools and improvised explosives. They watched as the human disappeared into the hole he had cut, emerged 30 seconds later and jumped off the ship just as it exploded from the inside. He fell 300 meters into the Thames River and somehow survived. The council chamber fell silent as they processed what they had just witnessed. Request priority communication with Earth, Velnara ordered. We need to understand what is happening. The transmission took several minutes to establish. When it finally connected, Ambassador Chen appeared on the central screen. But she was not in the diplomatic quarters where the council had expected to find her. She was standing in what appeared to be a military command center, wearing combat armor covered in alien lubricant and blast damage. Behind her, human soldiers moved with practiced efficiency, coordinating global defense operations with equipment that looked like it had been built in someone's garage and held together with duct tape and determination. Honored council members, Chen said, her voice carrying the unmistakable tone of someone who had been in combat and found it invigorating rather than terrifying. I assume you are calling to ask how we are winning. War Prime Kethmore leaned forward, his scales shifting to deep purple with confusion. Yes, our tactical analysis indicates this should be impossible. The Devourers have technology centuries ahead of yours. They have overwhelming numerical superiority. Their armor should be impervious to your weapons. Chen smiled, and every alien in the chamber felt a chill run down their equivalent of a spine. The answer is simple, council members. You created us. The transmission switched to show live battlefield footage. Humans were using destroyed Devourer parts as improvised armor. A group of teenagers had somehow reprogrammed a captured Devourer construct to fight alongside human forces. An elderly woman was directing artillery strikes while knitting what appeared to be a sweater. You see, honored counselors, you have spent millions of years making your worlds safe and comfortable. You eliminated your predators. You controlled your weather. You removed every challenge that might hurt your people. You created paradise worlds where survival means following protocols and death is a rare accident. The footage showed a human medic treating wounded soldiers, while enemy fire exploded around her. She did not flinch. She did not panic. She simply continued her work with steady hands and calm focus. But Earth tried to kill us every single day for 3 million years. Chen continued. Every hurricane, every earthquake, every plague, every ice age, every predator, every natural disaster you can imagine. Our world threw everything it had at us and we survived it all. A new scene appeared on screen. Human engineers were stripping technology from defeated Devourer ships and somehow integrating it into their own equipment in real time. Weapons that had taken the aliens decades to develop were being reverse-engineered by humans in hours. We did not evolve on a death world despite the danger. We evolved on a death world because of the danger. Every challenge that tried to destroy us made us stronger, smarter, more adaptable. The image shifted to show a human pilot whose aircraft had been shot down. Instead of surrendering or fleeing, he had somehow turned his crashed fighter into a ground-based weapon platform and was single-handedly holding off a Devourer assault squad. You created perfect worlds for perfect species, Chen said. We came from an imperfect world that created the most adaptable species in the galaxy. We do not need the best technology because we can make any technology work. We do not need perfect conditions because we learned to thrive in terrible ones. Council Prime Velnara found her voice. But the casualties, surely you cannot sustain such losses indefinitely. Chen's expression grew serious. We are losing people, yes. Good people. Brave people. But here is what you do not understand about humans. We do not measure victory by how many of us survive. We measure victory by whether our species continues to exist. The screen showed a human submarine crew that had somehow managed to attack a Devourer mothership from underwater. When their vessel was destroyed, the surviving crew members had continued the assault with nothing but diving gear and handheld weapons. Every human who dies fighting these things dies knowing that their sacrifice might save billions of others. Every soldier who charges a superior enemy knows that their attack might create the opening someone else needs. We do not fight as individuals hoping to survive. We fight as a species determined to win. Admiral Vextor's petals rustled with something that might have been admiration. But how do you maintain morale in the face of such losses? Chen laughed, and the sound was both joyful and terrifying. Morale? Counselor, we are not demoralized by this fight. We are energized by it. For the first time in human history, we face an enemy that is actually worthy of our full attention. The Devourers are not a natural disaster or a political problem or an economic crisis. They are a pure threat that must be destroyed. Completely. The transmission showed human civilians volunteering for suicide missions, with the same enthusiasm other species might show. For a pleasant vacation. This is what we were made for, Chen continued. This is why Earth spent millions of years trying to kill us, not to make us weak, but to prepare us for the day when something truly dangerous would threaten not just our world, but all worlds. War Prime Kethmore stared at the images in stunned silence. You are saying you were bred for war? No, Chen replied firmly. We were bred for survival. War is just one of the tools we use to achieve it. The communication ended abruptly as explosions rocked the human command center, but not before the council members saw Chen grab a rifle and head toward the sound of battle. With what could only be described as eager anticipation, the chamber sat in stunned silence as the implications of what they had witnessed settled over them. They are going to win, Felnara said quietly. Impossible, Zexthari protested. The Devourers have conquered hundreds of worlds. None of those worlds were death worlds, War Prime Kethmore observed, and none of them were inhabited by humans. Far across the galaxy, the tide of battle was turning. The Devourers, who had never faced serious resistance, were encountering an enemy that treated impossible odds as an interesting challenge, and for the first time in their mechanical existence, they were learning what it meant to be afraid. 7 days after the first Devourer landing craft touched Earth's soil, the impossible happened. The mechanical plague that had consumed 17 star systems was broadcasting a surrender signal. In the Galactic Council chambers, 47 species sat in absolute silence as the final battle reports scrolled across their displays. The numbers defied all logic and military theory. Of the original 40,000 Devourer ships, fewer than 3,000 remained operational, and those survivors were fleeing Earth's solar system as fast as their engines could carry them. But the most shocking statistic was not the alien losses. It was the human response to victory. They were disappointed the fight was over so quickly. Ambassador Chen stood at the speaker's podium, no longer in the observer section but at the position reserved for full council members. Her uniform still bore the scars of 7 days of continuous warfare, and her smile carried an edge that made even the most predatory species present suddenly feel like prey. Honored council members, she began, her voice carrying easily across the vast chamber. I am pleased to report that the Devourer threat has been neutralized. Earth stands ready to assist in the restoration of consumed systems and the integration of captured alien technology into galactic civilization. Council Prime. Velnara's compound eyes studied the human with a mixture of awe and terror. Ambassador, surely there must be terms to discuss. Reparations for the damage to your world. Compensation for your losses. Chen shook her head slowly. The council had its opportunity to discuss terms 7 days ago. Instead, you chose to use my homeworld as expendable bait in a trap you were too frightened to set yourselves. The silence stretched until it became painful. You gambled with 5 billion human lives because you assumed we were primitive and disposable, Chen continued, her tone remaining conversational. You decided to laugh at the Deathworld species instead of trying to understand what we were capable of. War Prime Kethmore's scales had shifted to the pale yellow of submission. What do you want from us, Ambassador? What we want is simple, Chen replied. Humanity formally applies for full membership in the Galactic Council. Not as junior partners seeking protection, but as equals contributing to galactic security. She gestured to the data display still showing footage of the concluded battle. Human engineers were already beginning to reverse engineer Devourer technology. Human medical teams were treating captured alien prisoners with the same care they gave their own wounded. Human construction crews were turning the wreckage of enemy ships into raw materials for rebuilding damaged cities. We offer our military expertise, our technological adaptability, and our survival knowledge to any council member who faces similar threats in the future. In exchange, we expect full voting rights, territorial sovereignty, and formal recognition that Earth and human space are under exclusive human protection. Admiral Vextor's petals rustled nervously. And if the council refuses these terms? Chen's smile widened, and several beings in the chamber unconsciously moved backward in their seats. Then you discover what happens when Deathworlders stop playing defense and start playing offense, she said pleasantly. But I am confident the council will make the wise choice. The vote was unanimous. Every single species, including those who had laughed loudest just 1 week earlier, voted to grant humanity full council membership with complete territorial autonomy. As the formal ceremonies concluded and representatives began filing out of the chamber, Zexathari approached Chen in the diplomatic quarter. His mandibles were arranged in what he hoped conveyed appropriate humility and respect. Ambassador Chen, he began carefully, I feel I owe you a personal apology for my earlier misconceptions about your species. Chen nodded graciously. Apology accepted, Ambassador. Though I should mention something that might interest you. Zexathari waited, suddenly unsure he wanted to hear what she had to say. What you witnessed over the past week was not humanity at our best, Chen said casually. We were holding back significantly to avoid completely terrifying our future galactic neighbors. The alien diplomat's mandibles froze mid-gesture. Holding back? Oh yes. You see, the Devourers made one critical tactical error. Chen's eyes held that same dangerous gleam that had unsettled the council months ago. They attacked Earth during peacetime. We had no major conflicts, no existential threats, no reason to mobilize our full capabilities. Zexathari felt something cold crawl down his exoskeleton. What do you mean? I mean that what you saw was humans treating the Devourer invasion as an interesting military exercise. We used it as an opportunity to test new tactics, train our forces, and evaluate alien technology. Chen paused to let that sink in before continuing. The entire war was conducted using less than 12% of Earth's military capacity. We never activated our full industrial base. We never mobilized our civilian population beyond volunteer support roles. We never deployed our most advanced weapon systems. The alien ambassador stared at her in growing horror. Most importantly, Chen added with casual cheerfulness, we were never actually angry. The Devourers were a threat to be eliminated, but they never made it personal. You should see what we are capable of when someone actually makes us angry. Zexathari found his voice with difficulty. How powerful are you, really? Chen considered the question thoughtfully. Do you know what humans call the Devourer invasion? No. The Tuesday War. Because it started on a Tuesday, lasted exactly 1 week, and was over by the following Tuesday. She shrugged. It barely rates a mention in our military academies now. Just another minor conflict that ended quickly. The alien diplomat felt his legs weaken, but they destroyed 17 star systems. They had consumed civilizations across the galaxy. Yes, they were certainly impressive by galactic standards, Chen agreed. But you have to understand, they had never encountered organized resistance from a species that evolution had spent millions of years trying to kill. They had no experience fighting beings who consider extinction-level threats to be routine challenges. She began walking toward the diplomatic transport that would take her back to Earth. The real tragedy, Ambassador, is that this whole situation could have been avoided if the Council had simply asked us politely for help instead of deciding to use us as expendable test subjects. Zexathari watched her leave, his mind reeling with the implications of what he had just learned. Behind him, other Council members were having similar conversations with human representatives. Each dialogue revealed new layers of human capability that had remained hidden during the brief war. Dr. Maria Santos casually mentioned to Admiral Vextor that human children had treated the Devourer computer systems as a particularly challenging video game, hacking through their defenses in hours for fun. Colonel Rodriguez explained to Warprime Kethmore that the improvised weapons humans had used were deliberately primitive because they wanted to study how Effective simple technologies could be against advanced enemies. Engineer Thompson told several fascinated aliens that humans had intentionally limited their response to avoid accidentally destroying devourer ships they wanted to capture and study. Each revelation drove home the same terrifying truth. Humanity had not been fighting for survival. They had been conducting a scientific experiment with the devourers as unwilling test subjects. As the council members returned to their homeworlds to report these findings, they carried with them a new understanding of the galaxy's power structure. The humans had not just defeated the devourers. They had done it so easily that they considered it a minor training exercise. And now those same humans were full members of the Galactic Council, with all the rights and privileges that entailed. The laughter that had filled the council chambers just 1 week earlier would never be heard again when humans were mentioned. It had been replaced by something much more appropriate when discussing the galaxy's newest apex predators. Respectful silence. Across the galaxy, the message spread quickly through diplomatic channels. Earth was no longer the primitive Deathworld to be mocked and dismissed. It was the home of humanity, the species that had looked at extinction and laughed. And in the deep void between galaxies, other mechanical intelligences detected the destruction of the devourers and quietly changed course away from this small spiral of stars. Some threats, they calculated, were not worth the risk. Even for machines that had consumed entire galactic clusters, there was wisdom in avoiding the attention of a species that treated impossible odds as entertainment. The humans had announced themselves to the universe in the most direct way possible, by making the galaxy's greatest nightmare run away in terror, and they had done it while barely trying.